All right. And Trottier for Discussions of Truth. Follow me on Instagram, primarily Twitter. Occasionally, it's IANTROTTIER, Trottier. And IanTrottier.com, IanTROTTIER.com. I've been doing this since 2016, officially actually coming up on the, uh, seventh year. Seventh year? 6 years, sixth complete year. This actually makes this episode makes 6 complete years. So we are moving into the 7th year. Come 2023, 7 years. I've been doing Discussions of Truth, and the first episode was with Miriam Henning. And that was, I think, January 4th, whatever the first Wednesday was of 2017. That's when I did the first show on Winwood Radio. We are completing now I'm completing 6 years. And in that 6-year time frame, I'm starting on a second book, waiting for Trine Day to run the press for Freedom Reserve No More Lies, which began its literary composition within the first year and a half of doing the show. So 4.5 years ago is when I started that work, and I just wrapped that up here the past few months. And like I said, within that time frame of wrapping up and submitting manuscript to publisher, I have started on a second book. Now, things really picked up for the program in the sense of what I personally was able to do in regards to political activism at around the fall mark of 2020. So that's been 2 years. So 4 years into the show. And that's when I had met Tiffany Trump. I'd been invited to a fundraiser for the president, Mike Pence. This is at Doral in Miami. That was 2 years ago. This past October. It was, I believe, the 15th day of October of that year. And that is when I had basically given the invitation that I had received, which had a pretty hefty price ticket to it, to the Google whistleblower, Zach Farnese, who's written the book now, Google Leaks, which has been out for about 1.5 years, I believe. The last chapter in that book, I believe, it is the last chapter, talks about this experience that I'm addressing right now. He was able to get the price tag to buy the ticket. It was only him that was supposed to go in, but the two of us got in because we were both granted access, and neither one of us said, "Hey, only one person's got the ticket." Basically, I was given a complimentary ticket for whatever reason that happened that day, but that led us to Tiffany. And a few hours after meeting Tiffany, and I looked her square in the eye, and I says, "You got to get this message to your father about the Google corruption." A few hours later, we're hanging out Doral, and that's when the president come in after the NBC town hall. He walks in, and Tiffany's by his side, and she walks him up to Zach. And then he points over to me and he says, "Hey, who's this guy? He looks like a prize fighter." You can find that video on my website. I think it's probably because of the tall brimmed hat I was wearing. It resembled some of these hats that, I don't know, boxers wear, I suppose. Whatever it did, it made the president think of me as a prize fighter, whatever that meant. But I'm sure that Tiffany, and I haven't had exchanged that dialogue with her since, but I'm sure Tiffany laid down the conversation that she had with me, and the urgency that I conveyed with my through my speech and eye contact. because she knew that she knew this was important. So this is the final episode of 2022. I don't know how many I've done this year. It hasn't been every Wednesday. Usually you can find me on Wednesdays. Um, but of I think about July is when I began not doing every Wednesday, as I was concentrating on getting the book done and the editor and getting it through, and so I have kind of ramped up the every Wednesday schedule again. As last week I hosted Mark Shaw for the fourth time, and if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and listen to the episode. I bring up some really critical components of how I viewed the information that he conveyed through his book and what I read of the book. And there's at least twice in our dialogue of about over an hour, I suppose it was, where I think I caught him with a good by surprise, if you will. Right? He was interested. Now, I consider Mark is the actual reason that I wrote the book in the first place. That Freedom Reserve No More Lies has become a book. Mark is the reason. He's written, I think, 30 plus books, and he was an early guest on my show, and he's the one that said, "Hey, Ian, you got to write a book. You got all these great interviews, of which I can think of three of them that are now passed away. Those are Charlotte Iserbit. She's now passed away. Um, Jordan Maxwell has passed away. He opened the show up. He opened the year up in 2020. Actually, it was January 3rd, 4th. The first show done in January that he opened that year up. He's now passed away. And then Paul Hellyer is another person I can think of who's passed away. Now, the Charlotte and Paul are both in their 90s. Paul and I actually share the same birthday. Jordan was in his 80s. So these are people that were up there. And if I'd go through the list of who I've interviewed, I'm sure that it's quite possible that someone else has passed away. So rest in peace to those three. Charlotte and I were talking about doing an in-face sit-down interview. She actually said she had a better interview with me than she did with Rents. Uh, and that was some nice credibility my way from somebody who's very respected. Charlotte's father was a member of Skull and Bones. She received a call from Anthony Sutton, the guy that I commonly address, former Hoover Fellow, that was really dissecting the corruption in the U.S. government financial system, primarily rooting through the Skull and Bones Society at Yale. Now, what is the Skull and Bones Society? I can get into that in a little bit as well. And of course, this is just kind of my research, and it's open to being inaccurate, of course. But the premise of Discussion of Truth, first known as the Florida Sun and Spray Show, when I hosted Miriam, the premise, of course, was exposing the corruption behind the pharmaceutical medical industry that ties closely into um, the financial industry in the United States. And that's why I talk frequently about the Federal Reserve and the corruption behind the Federal Reserve. But it was being exposed to the Zika virus in 2016. Rest in peace. Another, and really the indirect reason as to why I do the show. The direct reason is a woman named Kitty. Kitty was a manager. She was helping manage Wynwood Radio. I picked her up in a lift one day. I started talking about the research I'd done. She says, "Come down to the studio, talk about it." So I did. I was probably 39 at that time. Maybe I had just turned 40. Uh, and it changed my life. The research that I found just completely changed my life, right? And that's the direct reason I started doing the show. The indirect reason is a guy named David Granoff, former best friend of mine. Former because he's now deceased. He committed suicide, unfortunately, a couple years ago, October 2020, as a matter of fact. No, 2019. Excuse me. It's been 3 years now that David's been gone. But David was a very successful PR manager in his day. Worked himself up from nothing to being the reason that Anna Nicole Smith became a mega star. I may be incorrect, but he is the one that got her from Guess into some of the more mainstream publications. So I think he came across Anna when she had already become a guest model. May have that incorrect though. But he, of course, very familiar with affluent lifestyles, private planes, beluga caviar, whatever it may be. And I met David because I was trying to give Justin Bieber one of my nutrition company shirts. I wanted to give him a shirt of the company that I was working for. I later started my own, um, and I halted that because I got into this. But that's called Rep Explosion. And again, I halted everything. I started a valet parking business whose name I sold to the largest operator in New York City, iPark Valet. Go into New York and park your car and walk down the street, whatever it may be. Just look at a parking garage in New York, and you will see that name, iPark. That's my name. I created it in San Francisco in 2006, 2007. Started using it, and so I'd done different things, but everything came to a halt when I came across the Zika virus. That's when I stopped everything. This has been my soul, and I got into carpentry to make ends meet. This is why I began painting. Of course, like most American middle class, uh, if you're if you're in the middle class, or I mean, I just like to hate to generalize, but most of us knows when most of us, I would think, most men out there know what it's like to paint, right? Paint a wall, paint a house, right? And it's not that I had never painted before, but that's when I picked up kind of remodeling and doing carpentry. Was a means to sustain this focus of developing discussion of truth and writing the book. The new book should, I hope it comes September. Okay, it's going to be. I've gotten to a point where I really understand the nexus and concern of my concentration and what it is. So I'm going to get into that in a moment for you. But yes, political activism took me to being face to face with Donald Trump, him calling me a prize fighter, and then just kind of other people that supported him and supported the country and the Constitution, GOP and non-GOP, that kind of rallied around my efforts and wanted to help kind of build me. So I thank those people for that. Many of them continue that to this day. I've got a lot of people that do support me, not financially, but in many other ways. And let me give an example here. And I want to shout out, if you will. I want to compliment the work of um, Michael Miller in Texas. Warriors for ranchers for what's this? Anyway, he's a warrior for rancher. He's a rancher for war. Anyway, he's a veteran. I don't recall the actual name of his organization, but he is trying to halt this disgusting illegal immigration. I say disgusting because illegal. All right, it has nothing to do with people that are crossing. I'm sure they're great people, but the fact that they're crossing illegally in the United States current administration allows that to continue, frankly find disgusting. A country has laws because it has things that are known to make it an effective society. Um, just like all of us need to be abiding by laws, right? You have various laws that you must live by. The Constitution, or the United States Constitution, developed 17 what was it, 83 is when it was adopted. Those are a set of laws to be governed by. You're living in a city, you're driving down the road, there are laws. Okay, you may say laws are meant to be broken. Okay, laws are meant to be broken, but in regards to warriors for ranchers, I think is the name of it. Um, Look, I've been working with a foundation called the Social Media Freedom Foundation, spearheaded by Jason Fick. He was formerly censored by Facebook, and a Facebook whistleblower, Ryan Hartwig, came my way and says, "Hey, can you help this guy out?" Because he knew what I was able to do with Zach in a sense, right? Zach and I was a team effort. It's just that I was given the invitation to get into the fundraiser, the private fundraiser, and then Zach and I working really well together. Went in and just it's a great book. Google Leaks, buy it now. real fun chapter. And I write about it in my book, and you get my angle, my view from it in my book. And you can order that right now on booksamillion.com. No More Lies. Ian Trottier, No More Lies. Just type that in, it'll come up. Pre-order it. And so Ryan comes my way, and so I start working with Jason. Well, after about a year and a half, these are the kind of highlights, and this is the reason I'm talking about Mike Miller. I was able to get. I was at a fundraiser for Marjorie Taylor Greene at a private residence in Dallas, where Louis Gohmert, who I had interviewed a couple months previous to that, was there. And I said, "Hey, Louis, are you involved in social media freedom, big tech censorship?" Yes. I want to get you on the phone with this guy. So I um, called Jason, and they had about a 20-minute conversation. Louis, who's now retiring, I believe, Louis got fully involved. His office got fully involved with Social Media Freedom Foundation, and now has a constitutional challenge as a result of that introduction I made. Now, when I called Jason, he's quick to answer the phone because probably 4 months prior to that, I was in Hialeah, Miami, where Governor DeSantis, who I had met for a second time as a result of me being in this legislation signing in Hialeah, I'd approached Ron. I'd spoken to one of his assistants, said I wanted to talk to him. He came my way. I says, look, I want you. And this is what's interesting is that at about 5 months prior to that is when I was at Doral, at Mar-a-Lago. After being at Doral, I'm in Mar-a-Lago with Zach. Again, I'd been invited. Zach and I had gone. Thank you, Zach. He picked up the price tag on that another time because he picked up the price on the fundraiser at Doral, which I wasn't supposed to be at, but I was given a ticket to go. So 2-for-1 deal. And then I get invited to Doral. He picks up the ticket for that price, ticket that. So both times, make it very clear, both times at the fundraiser in Doral and at Mar-a-Lago, Zach picked up the price. Thank you, Zach. And by the way, I think Zach and Miriam have had a romance. Zach wasn't a whistleblower when I started the show in 2016 or 2017 when I hosted Miriam. They did not know each other. So it's really interesting that as the time went on, Miriam and Zach have a romantic interest with one another. And I think to this day they do. But of course, like I said, Zach hadn't blown the whistle with Project Veritas when I started doing the show in 2017. I always say I started in 2016 because that's when I started the research. But I didn't actually do the first show until the first Wednesday of January 2017. So here I am in Hialeah, or go back to Mar-a-Lago. I'm in Mar-a-Lago. We're at Doral. We meet the president. We meet Tiffany. We meet the president. And we get into Doral the next month, or Mar-a-Lago. We go to Mar-a-Lago, and I take Zach up to Governor DeSantis. I introduce him to Governor DeSantis as a Google whistleblower. So here I've introduced Zach to, in an inadvertent way. This isn't direct because it went through Tiffany, which was product of Zach's efforts. But here, through my initial efforts, I'll take the credit for that. I get Zach introduced to the president of the United States, right? By the way, he calls Zach a hero. And that's a quote that's listed on the back of Google Leaks. You can see that. Right under the Cheryl Atkinson quote. Okay. Then a month later, we're at Mar-a-Lago, and I introduce him to Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis looks me in the eye after we shake hands and says, we need to dismantle Google. It's exactly what he tells me. Fast forward 5 months, Hialeah. I get invited to a legislation signing. And by the way, I did run kind of really. Nobody contributed my campaign, even though I did have a restaurant owner say he was going to contribute. I just never went through it. But I did run for a Senate seat in Florida, in Miami. So I'm not opposed to getting involved in politics whatsoever. And I've had other people ask me to run. And one person actually is even told me that they will, and that person has integrated me into some pretty interesting connections in DC. Anyway, I'm going to stop that there. So I'm in Hialeah, and the governor and I are walking side to side. And I'm telling him about Zach Voorhees. I don't know if he remembered or not. And asked me if he remembered. And I says, I want to introduce you to somebody else named Vic. So I take the phone out and I call Thick right there. Bing, 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 bing. Ring, 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 ring. No answer. By the time the governor and I had already arrived to his motorcade, he had to go. He gets in his car. He leaves. Of course, I go back into the building and Jason calls. Jason, you just missed an opportunity to talk to the governor of Florida on the phone. So every time I call Jason, he's pretty quick to answer. So when I'm in Dallas and I'm with Louie, he answered right away. That was productive. Constitutional challenge as a result of that. Okay. Now, Mike Miller. Um, I have been working for 2 years to get to Ted Cruz because of the censorship issue. Um, and Jason sends me 2 weeks ago. He sends me something in regards to something that came out of Cruz's office with somebody named Gonzalez. He says, I need to get to Cruz. I call some of the people I know and I get to Mike Miller. Mike is a great guy. Support what he's doing right now. Google search it, support him. I don't know how he made it happen, but um, he gets a phone call. He gets a phone call from Cruz's office in DC wanting to talk to me. So whatever he had done, he got Cruz's office in DC calling him to get me on the phone. That conversation was scheduled because I didn't answer the phone. Right here, you got people not answering phones. I wasn't at the phone. I didn't answer it. But a couple days later, I get on the phone with Cruz's office in DC, talking to Jason Fick. So we'll see how that transpires. It's possible that Cruz will get involved. I don't know. But what we do need to do is stand up for our constitutional right of free speech and free press. And if you happen to be sitting back and saying, oh, these are private companies, they can deplatform, they can erase, they can take down whatever they want, have a look at what Fick's doing. Because I agree with Fick, and I say no, you can't, because you're providing even though it's private entity, you're providing free speech and free press platform in a public space, right? Now, that's me in layman's terms. You can get into the nitty gritty stuff with Fick because he'll explain it incredibly well. That's one example of basically how now there's a few examples along that line, but it's an example of how you can simply get active politically to stand up for what you feel are your rights. Because this is nothing, approaching my 7th year, this is nothing more than me saying, hey, wait a second. I see the Zika virus. I see there's these corrupt strings, vaccination mandates strings that I don't agree with. And I'm going to speak out. Right. And that is what any one of us can do. You just have to do it. All right. So these are why I bring forth. I'm in DC. Okay. And again, it's with Fick. And I'm working on a totally different project outside of that, but that's one project that I commit as much time as I possibly can because I believe in it. Um, I'm in a private club by invite in DC. Jim Jordan comes walking through. I introduce myself to Jim. I pick up the phone. I get Jason on the phone. The two of them have dialogue. You can make a difference, but if you don't open your mouth, if you don't write, if you don't contact people, then you're not going to make a difference. Okay, so if nothing more, use what I've been telling you here. Use uh, my experiences as fuel and support for your own personal endeavor, to how you can make a difference, because you can make a difference, but you have to exert. You have to put your foot forward. Okay, you have to knock on that door. You have to send that letter. You have to send that email. You have to make your opinion heard. Okay, if the folks on the Mayflower never boarded the Mayflower, the country would have never began. So I think that's a pretty interesting segue into what I want to get into right now. And um, we are certainly in a challenging time in the United States. We have just gotten through what I consider the biggest attempt at genocide since Hitler's Germany. Uh, these COVID mandates um, are froth. They're froth for a larger agenda, in my view. And go to my website right now, iantrottier.com, click on 2022 America, a European Puppet, and I list exactly why I say that. And one of the most appalling and astonishing things to come out of that is uh, um, is a protocol of the learned elders of Zion, which my research show are not Jews; they are Jesuits. Now, the Jesuits were created in 1543 by the agent Saint Ignatius de Loyola. This was done in Paris. Jesuit is really a French term. It's the term for the members of the Society of Jesus. They call themselves. The Society of Jesus is an order, a Vatican order. It's a military order. Militantis regime ecclesiae, I think, is the literal term for the order, the law that was the Papa Bull, if you will. It was a Papa Bull. I don't know that much about the Vatican. I know what Papa Bulls are, and I can tell you that this transatlantic slave trade was conducted because of papal bulls, and slave trading companies that were based off of conquistadores, conquering lands. That is what the British East Indies Company was based off of, was trading natural resources. Now, the British East Indies Company didn't, not that I know of, my research may be inaccurate, didn't directly involve themselves in uh, slave trading, but the slave trading companies are based off of those types of companies. And they were in effect due to papal bulls. This isn't an American thing. Oh, some of these founders may have been slave owners, but that doesn't mean that they incepted the idea of importing human beings to be used as um, slaves, machines, in essence. Okay, slave trading did not start with the United States of America. The United States of America was essentially forced into this um, profiteering exploitation of labor due to, in my opinion, the fact, and this is a fact, that the city of London financed the American Revolution. A lot of people don't pay homage to that. Where did the Continental Army get its financing? Well, it got its financing from the city of London, which is not part of the monarchy. It's not part. If you're British, it's not part of the United Kingdom. It is a Roman banking entity that is private, and though it resides geographically in London, it is not part of London, as you know. London, it's not part of the United Kingdom. Okay, it controls the monarchy. It is a papal banking institute, and it financed the Continental Army. It financed the American Revolution, um, and more directly or indirectly, depending on how you look at it, but more importantly, anyway, is the British East Indies Company, because the first flag, which is the U.S. Grand Union flag, the first flag of the United States was the British East Indies Company flag. It has 13 stars and stripes, and in its canton, which is the upper left corner, it has had the Union Jack. The Union Jack resembles the Vatican. the entity that controls England and the United Kingdom. It bears 3 crosses. That is the cross of St. Andrew, St. Patrick, and St. George. That's Scotland, Ireland, and England. That's what was adopted by Washington and Franklin in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1775 and flown aboard the Alfred, John Paul Jones ship in the Delaware that led to the American Revolution, the start of it. Okay, that was the flag, folks. So these are the things that you're, for instance, not taught in school. These are the things that you've got to dig for and find out. These are the things that I've spent 6 years now finding, uncovering, to understand why the country is, well, becoming dismembered. It's becoming ununified, isn't it? So anyway, I want to share with you, and you've allowed me to share with you some of the things that I believe you can do if you get involved. If my words resonate with you, get involved. If you're opposed to mandates on vaccines, make your voice heard. If you're opposed to the fact that the United States has a $30+ trillion federal debt, if you're opposed to that, you need to let your voice be heard. If you are opposed to illegal immigration, let your voice be heard. But if you remain silent and you don't express your opinion, then this entity that I will explain and I've already touched on controls the United States because it controls it financially, and it did so through the Alumbrados. Is the predecessor of Adam Weissetz's Illuminati, the Spanish Alumbrados. This is a group of the enlightened ones of the Jesuit order. Okay, and this has everything to do with the Vatican stronghold over Israel and Jerusalem. Okay, it is a holy war. It is a Vatican holy war. Now, this is where I urge you to listen to Jordan Maxwell. And the great being of the United States is based, the cornerstone of the United States is freedom of religion. There's just no way around it. That's just the way it is. What is religion? Religion is an interpretation, depiction, a story, an explanation as to why you exist. You are free to accept it in whatever form it comes to you by. And you don't have to accept it if you don't want to. The fact that you just exist, you can just acknowledge that. Doesn't have to have an explanation. But religion, of course, explains that. Now, is religion, therefore, organized religion, the most powerful monopoly that's ever been created by man? That's open to discussion. And that's why I invite you to listen to Jordan Maxwell. These are the great philosophical debates of Athenian orators. How do you best govern masses of people? How do we best get along? Nothing has created that more successfully than the United States Constitution, in my opinion. It doesn't need to be changed. It resembles these age-old struggles: freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion. These age-old struggles, right to bear arms. These age-old struggles that man has always had to fight for. This is a major gift that you've been given and you've been inherited, and you must stand firm for it, in support of it, or it will be taken from you. Pardon me. Okay. So I've already mentioned the basis, right? The basis for the American Revolution economically. I've mentioned the Illuminati. This isn't conspiracy theory. These are all facts. And that's why you have to embrace that word conspiracy, because if you knew what the plan was, then it wouldn't be a conspiracy. A conspiracy is private, secret. And you're telling me that conspiracies don't exist? I mean, come on, give me a break. You're your wife or your husband, if they've cheated on you, that is a conspiracy to do something uh, that doesn't benefit you, right? It benefits them. Conspire. Uh, that's a kind of a very vague use of a conspiracy, but it's a one person conspiracy likely, or it's whoever they've done the act with the partner. There's a type of conspiracy. So conspiracy secrets do exist. Um, Identifying an organization that might conspire to bring down the United States, that's on a different level, right? That's on a totally different level. And whether you like Trump or not, whether he's part of a conspiracy or not, I don't know. But he did often use the term deep state. And deep state, in my research, is a real thing. I mean, walk up to the White House and demand that Biden pay off the 30 plus trillion-dollar federal debt. Go to Capitol Hill, demand that. It's not going to happen, And I'm saying nonviolent. Obviously, saying legally. Do these things legally, but you have to get involved, right? You have to be. It's not going to happen because it seems clearly that the mechanism, the financial mechanism, the controlling, which roots out of Switzerland, um, uh, the Bank of International Settlements, created by the Vatican. And my research shows that. This instrument, this financial instrument, is meant to break down the United States, destroy the dollar, and absorb it into a global currency. Okay, that is what makes sense to me. And so then what is the entity? Is what you need to be asking yourself right now, and I'm going to steer you in a direction that I believe is that entity. It's what my research shows. This isn't something driven by the Chinese. This isn't something driven by the Russians. This isn't something driven by North Korea, Kim Jong Un. This isn't something driven by another nation. It's something driven by the financial instrument that regulates global currency and exchange. And that, in my research, is based off of what I presume and see as being the biggest threat to freedom and liberty and freedom of religion precisely that has ever existed among man. And certainly an enemy to the British for centuries. And therefore an enemy to the United States because we speak their language, don't we? And that is wrong. Now, you may disagree with me, and I urge you to disagree with me. But I base that off of an order that I already mentioned to you, and it's called the uh, Regime Militantes Exclusiae, I believe was the term. That is the creation of the Society of Jesus. If you take North America and South America, and Stanford now there's people in Stanford now that do not like. Stanford, by the way, is ran by a president that's Oxford educated. He's Canadian. He's not American. Is he Jesuit? I don't know. Is he Catholic? Seems like it. I don't have anything against Catholics. Again, I'm all about freedom of religion. So choose whatever religion you want. Just make it peacefully and make a balanced and level playing field for all of us to live in. Okay. It's just like, and by the way, this David, my best friend, he's gay guy. He's gay. He was gay, openly gay, hit on me all the time. Okay. Now I respected him because I liked him as a person. I enjoyed being with him. He was a great, wonderful human being. I'm not homosexual. And I told him, David, I'm not gay. And he respected that. It was a mutual respect. I didn't care what his sexuality was. What I cared was he was a good human being. And he was one of the best that I've ever befriended. So this is about respecting other people. Okay, so so you want to transition, you want to become a transgendered person, do that. But don't feed that down elementary school kids' throats. Don't let a person become 18 and make that decision. Let the natural biological course of humanity take its course before impressing a person on becoming gay or transition to become a man or a woman that is not their birth. That's my opinion. Okay? Where could this be coming from? So we get back to the learned elders of Zion, and we look at protocol. I believe it's 13. I might be incorrect. You can go back to my article. It's called European Banking Puppet, America, European Banking Puppet. It's at iantrottier.com. Read that article. Let's just say it's protocol 13. I think it probably is. It might be 11. And that openly calls for an inoculation of the masses. Look, if you're not, according to the Jesuits, their goal is to um, convert every human being on the planet to Catholicism. And in many cases, throughout the conquest of Latin America, i.e., Mexico, the Aztecs, if the conversion was not given, so if the Indian, the native, was not willing to convert, they were put to death, folks. Death. They were killed. Okay. Um, so let's transition real quickly into what was going on in Paraguay, Brazil, and Uruguay, maybe parts of Argentina at the time, in the 17th and 18th centuries. There you have, according to former guests on the show, it's been about a year and a half, Eric John Phelps. There you had the really preliminary stages of what Engels and Marx, um, who convened in London to develop their points of communism. There you had the preliminary stages of what communism really was. And they were reductions. It was a system of reductions, whereas you would pool the natives into these villages. The villages would be run by a father, and these people were exploited for labor, a form of slavery, right? And so the profit and the products that were made, the money was made, was pooled together, so that everybody kind of lived under this pooled communal fiscal living. And then, of course, the sugar or whatever was being refined or developed or manufactured was shipped and sold to places like China. But this is a Jesuit system. Remember, the Jesuit is a militant, regime militant, ecclesias. It's a military teaching regime. There's a Thomas Wolsey was a cardinal archbishop in England, and basically before Henry VIII refinanced it, he was the founder of Christ College at Oxford, a Jesuit. Or Catholic anyway, a Catholic at the time. I believe he was a Jesuit, and he devised a form of conquest in regards to education. So an educational form of conquest, not a form of conquest conventional, like put a dagger up to your throat, convert or I kill you. Okay, which was happening in with the natives in America, right? In England, it was re-educate against education. At that time, Martin Luther and the Reformation. So he had a counter-reformation tactic, which is referred to as learning against learning. And that is basically brainwashing people into falling into a trap, right? So giving you a medicine and saying, "Hey, you've got to," even though this vaccine, this is even though this vaccine, or uh, even though this virus will only cause flu-like symptoms if you're a healthy human being. If you have some health issues, it might kill you. But hey, most things in life will kill. Alcohol overdose, whatever, will kill you if you have poor health conditions. So COVID-19, nothing more than flu, a la Zika, right? Flu-like symptoms. I'll take this vaccine to help boost your immune system. Well, hold on, it's not even a vaccine. It's not even peer reviewed. It's not technically a vaccine. It's an injection. It's an inoculation. And that's why I write. Um, and it's in your American European banking puppy. That's where I put this information in there because it is what seems to be. And if you're again, you're historically, you've got this long plan to kill the United States and drown it in debt because John Adams said that, right? You can enslave a nation by sword, or you can enslave them more effectively by debt. Um, if you kill them by debt, you kill the nation by debt. You weaken them, and you obliterate their currency. So the U.S. dollar, let's say it's on its death path here. What's the next level, right? The next level is absorbing it into a global currency, and with the advent of digitization and technology, um, cryptocurrencies and that sort of thing, you then have an integration of digital currency. So that's where you have, of course, groups like ID 2020 and some of these advancements in regards to quantum dot tattoos, where you can, and these things are already happening in northern European countries. I believe Norway, Sweden. I may be wrong, but you can already make purchases um, with things with this quantum dot tattoo or microchip in your arm. Okay? So these advances in technology are already happening. Let's get back to the. Let me get back to the reduction system. So again, if your goal is to convert everyone on the planet to your theology, your ideology, your religion. And historically, you have killed in that name, in the name of God, to conquer lands, to conquer peoples. And that's where I ask myself, what could be possibly Trump talking about in regards to deep state? Now, in 2016, I had come across Anthony Sutton, and I was already reading um, uh, snippets of his books that were written about the skull and bones. They were written about Wall Street. They're written about this financial manipulation. And then then you've got Trump in office spewing out deep state, fake news. No, Obama never said anything like that. So, I mean, what we have are incredibly trying times. We're just living in trying times, aren't we? I mean, that's just the way it is. And which means now more than ever, um, you need to make your voice. And if you disagree with what I'm saying, tell me. You don't have to agree with it. If you disprove things that I'm mentioning, disprove them. Educate me. But for instance, the Society of Jesus, this military order that uses education to conquer, okay? And by the way, the Swiss Pontifical Guard that's the Swiss Army, is the guard and army to the Pope. That's another fact. You can look at historically these very wealthy European, and if you can create a religion that suppresses people eh, against their will or along with their will, it gives them a reason to live, gives them an explanation to live, which is basically what religion is. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is what it is. People need answers. People want answers. And if you accept, for instance, Christianity is one of the oldest religions on the planet. I argue that it is the most financially successful. It is the most financially successful religion on the planet. Um, then the Vatican and Jerusalem have been at odds for a long, long time. A long time. In fact, what is it? The Notre Dame, the Jerusalem, right, is the Vatican headquarter in Jerusalem. Did you realize that even exists? Do you realize that exists? So a lot of these instruments that are played on an international level really come down to the reason this country was formed in the first place, and that is man's age-long struggle to live freely. And if you can manipulate and monopolize a society based on your uh, theological, religious, ideological um, belief system, then you continue to grow and expand. And such is the case as the Vatican, which is well over 2,000 years old, isn't it? Um, Roman Catholicism. So, if we're looking at this historical concept, and by the way, Georgetown University, which feeds into the Washington politics, is a Jesuit institution. It's the oldest Jesuit institution. Rome on the Potomac was the original name for Washington D.C. The Pentagon is a building that's based off of um, a structure in Rome with five sides. And I'll get that name for you right now. Known as the Cap Caprarola, the Caprarola. It's a Farnese. The House of Farnese is a financed that. The Pentagon was built by an Irish Catholic. So again, nothing against Catholics, but if I find ties into Rome, like Archbishop Vigano is saying, and he's openly said that this whole COVID-19 vaccine agenda is just that. It's an agenda to control. This is one of the highest ranking Vatican uh, bishops, personnel, to say that. Okay, you have power struggles within the Vatican. You look at the Medici family, the Orsini family, Aldobrandini family, the Rothschild are nothing more than papal money managers. Okay, Jerusalem, they're Jewish. Okay, yeah. So what? Jerusalem is not the power that Rome is. Rome is a global power. Yeah, there's Jews globally, but they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the networking that the it, nor have Jews ever nor have Jews, and by the way, my best friends have always been Jews, but nor have Jews ever conquered in the name of God. What American country is a Jewish country by foundation? Okay, I'm not talking about Judeo-Christian principle. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what country in America or the world was was founded by a Jewish conquest. Not a single one. And the deliberation and the argument is that Israel isn't either. Israel is um, by means of British Lord Balfour and the Rothschild. Israel, modern day Israel, is nothing more than a Vatican establishment. Okay, so let me wind down here because let me give some of the things that I want you to walk away with. Princess Margarita de Bourbon de Parma. Okay, and I'm not telling you to. I'm just saying this is even the Medici. There's Lord Medici, the Orsini, Pepe Orsini, considered a great pope. I don't know these people. I have nothing against these people. Okay, I'm just saying that they come from historically very wealthy lines, and manipulate. They manipulate. Okay, look, I was able to grace the presence of Prince Charles. Seemed like a nice guy. He didn't shake my hand. He turned away. But Camilla did shake my hand. She seems wonderful. Okay, I have met some of these people. They're great people. They're just like you and I. Okay, but the objective here is to reinforce, to educate, reinforce, and sustain and strengthen what we've been given, and that is a wonderful country. That is the United States of America. Okay, but for instance, Maria Beatriz is a descendant of the House of Farnese by means of the House of Bourbon and Parma. They intermarry, right? Um, what is the Farnese? Alessandro Farnese was the financer, basically, of the Parisian, that is Paris, development of the Society of Jesus by Saint Ignatius de Loyola. That is financed by some of the research I've come across by the House of Farnese. Um, okay, and there have been popes. The Medici's, I think, have provided 5 or 6 popes. The Orsini's have provided a couple different popes. Some of these old European power families have provided the pope. It just so happens that Francis, an Argentinian, is the first Jesuit pope in 600 years. The first Jesuit pope, and it is the Jesuits that are a military order. Okay, it is their from my understanding, is their objective to conquer you, and they do it unconventionally. They do it by tactics such as learning against learning. They do it as tactics such as what Eric John Phelps regards as the birth of these communist practices, as the Paraguayan reductions or Uruguayan reductions, the reduction systems out of South America, 17th, 18th century. Okay, but let me go down the line here, and so I've given you the House of Farnese. Okay, that's something for you to look into, to consider. I've given you a lot of information here. Look at the U.S. Grand Union flag. Tie back the roots to the City of London and the British East Indies Company. There has been there has been one president, U.S. president. There's been one U.S. president that left office without debt. One. No, it was not Trump. Certainly not Biden. Not Obama. Not either of the Bushes. There's been one president, not JFK. There's been one president that has left office. One president that has left office without a debt, and that was Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson ran on the elite re-election platform to kill the banks. He knew of the corruption. Washington was in debt when he left. Lincoln was in debt. Jackson was the only president to leave office without a debt, with a surplus. Clinton didn't do it. So this country has been in financial turmoil and ruin since its inception. And I'm telling you, it has everything to do with the City of London. But it digs deeper than that. It goes to the Bank of International Settlements in Basel. Now, that's an institution that wasn't created in 1776, didn't exist. Bank of International Settlements, to my understanding, is more of a, and I'm going to throw this one out there, and I'm likely very wrong on this, but that is something that is related to the outcome of World War II. I might be totally off on that, and pardon me, I do not mean to discredit myself, but I am forewarning that I might be very, very off on that. But the City of London, yes, financed the American Revolution. So these are the strings that need to be uncovered. These are the channels that you need to be. This is what you need. The Lord Mayor of the City of London is a more powerful figure in England than is the King Charles today. Rest in peace, Elizabeth. Okay, more powerful. For instance, the chariot that Lord Mayor drives has more jewels, more precious metal than does the monarch. Now, these are things that you can find in public searches, search results, Google, for instance. So I just want to give you a list of names as you're looking at Obama and you're saying, well, Obama was the first black president. It's a wonderful thing because it's great for democracy. It's great for diplomacy. But well, wait a second here. He was really, all he was doing was breaking down the columns, the support columns that made America great, right? That made it such great. It was really just conforming into this more globalized system. Okay, and that's my opinion. But if you are there saying, oh, well, Obama, yeah, there are things that are great about him, but there's also things that are really interesting. And that where was the birth certificate? Who was his father? These different things. Then you can ask these questions, and I'm gonna relate them right back to this road that I'm suggesting you get on, because it's what makes sense to me. Now, I might be wrong, but it is what makes complete sense to me, and that is the road to the Vatican. All roads lead to Rome. And that's the old saying.